Welcome to the beginning of the true end of Gran Turismo Sport. I've said since the very beginning of the game that it has many flaws, and I'm far from the only one saying that. Look at just the general scores of Gran Turismo Sport, whether it be its overall rating from 1 to 10, or just overall replayability. Given that it's online only, that's going to be iffy in the future, and there's a lot of things holding GT Sport back, and a lot of people have said it, including myself. But it is fair to say Gran Turismo Sport still has some fans. Supposedly, the official sales total, according to a lot of marketing executives and such, is about 8 million copies. While that's less than like Gran Turismo 3 and such, it's more than GT6. GT6 sold somewhere in the 6 million copy range, when GT5 through 1 sold between about 9.5 million to about 12 million, but 8 million is still a respectable amount. Though the total amount of players now is a lot less than the total amount of sales supposedly are. This particular event was the very first time trial in Gran Turismo Sport. They added time trials, which was essentially seasonal events, to Gran Turismo 5 even, and they added it this late in GT Sport. This was the first one, and being at Nürburgring, that's a pretty well known track, it had less than 30,000 people in it. You may be thinking Nürburgring's a long track, so maybe that deters some people. The other, very first one, there was two that started and ended at the same time, was at Willow Springs Streets of Willow, a quite short track. It also had roughly the same amount of people. 30,000 or so in the world, in a game that sold 8 million copies. Again, that's not the exact number for either. It was 30-something thousand, and it's supposedly sold 8 million copies. PD themselves hasn't said an exact number. It seems kind of odd if it truly did sell 8 million copies, because it seems like a respectable number to go out and say. But supposedly that was figured out by just the sales quotas and stuff that was done by marketing people to like talk to investors and such. There was an article on GT Planet about that, and there's ultimately been multiple articles on multiple sites that deal with marketing and all that stuff. So I'm not going to link one particular thing because the numbers aren't downright official by PD themselves, but that's just what supposedly has been figured out. What is known, though, is just the overall decline of everything about GT Sport. The overall bug fixes and stuff are becoming less and less. There's still some glaring bugs in the game, like PD still doesn't know how to round the penalty system. If you finish a race with 1 millisecond of penalty, it counts for 1 whole second. They've done some stuff to the penalty system. As I said, it's not the worst it's ever been. But as a video I just showed recently, I'm still darn near boycotting the whole system entirely, and this is somewhat of a reason of me making the video, but this video isn't necessarily my opinion, it's just how the game is going as a whole at this point. Which brings to the next thing. I'll give my opinion about something going on in a wider range of things, and ultimately give other people's general thoughts as well. I won't say names for this again, because privacy and such, as I usually say in videos, but there's many a GT Sport YouTuber, that's fair enough. There's many a GT Sport YouTubers actually quite fast now too, which is nice. And while a lot of them are popular, some of them I think deserve more popularity, and something I may do later on is another YouTube showcase series. I'll see on that as it goes. I'm starting college soon, back next week, so I'll be quite a bit busier, and there's no doubt the video quantity will go down. This little bit of time I'm actually able to do about 1 video a day. A week from now it might not even be 1 video a week, who knows. I seriously won't know till I'm fully in college. I ain't yet, so I truly don't know. It might still be able to be 3 videos a week or something, but it might be less. I don't know. But for now, again, not just me, everybody's starting to see the whole Gran Turismo FIA events being a little bit skewed now. By that, I mean Toyota's winning. Lexus is winning. Toyota and Lexus are the same overall company. Not too many others are winning. The only other to actually win an overall event is Aston Martin, who has this deal with Red Bull, and Red Bull is one of the main sponsors. We know the overall results of the FIA championships. We know what manufacturer is going to win. Granted, the Nation Cup is still fairly interesting, but it kind of ends up dying because of still the penalty system is so flawed. The literal human stewards who are there can't keep up. I don't know if that's their own fault or if that's just the penalty system being so far behind. I don't exactly know how to implement it because they don't know what the penalty system is going to do. They don't want to completely contradict the Gran Turismo penalty system on live streams because then it makes the entire game look bad. So at points they literally don't know what to do. And it sold in the Nations Cup final. Remember the Red Bull race? Remember the one where the driver ran out of fuel at the end? Well, apparently that driver pretty much ran out of fuel because he pretty much got wrecked beforehand. And when you get wrecked, you start from a lower speed, thus taking longer to get up to speed, and thus that uses up more fuel. And essentially that driver actually calculated that it wouldn't have ran out of fuel if he didn't get wrecked. And he got wrecked. The driver actually wrecked him, did get a small penalty, but it was roughly like a 1 second penalty or something like that. And ultimately, the driver that got wrecked cost about 7 or 8 seconds and down 4 positions. And again, that kind of goes back to something that I've said about the Gran Turismo Sport penalty system, is it does generally give a penalty to the rightful driver. Just it also does generally screw up in some other way, shape, or form. Either give a penalty to the driver who got wrecked, or give a penalty to the driver who just blatantly messed up and didn't affect any others. And it has way more flaws than successes. So much so that the real life people don't even know what to do with it at this point. And that affects the entire real life racing aspect as well of Gran Turismo Sport. Remember how at the beginning of GT Sport, supposedly the winners of these events were supposed to get World Road Racing license? Guess what? They still ain't, folks. They still ain't getting those licenses. What is the reasoning behind it? Nothing official, but I have a hunch it's just the FIA doesn't want to give a license to someone who got there because of iffy ways. Granted, that actual person did a good job, but a lot of the other people did their fair share of a good job too, and just the person who won a lot of the times just got the lucky RNG. They didn't get a penalty when other drivers who didn't deserve a penalty did. Granted, there's really cotton-picking fast drivers out there. I will say their name because it's a compliment. It's obvious Igor Fraga is fast because he's fast in a whole heck of a heap of other racing games and races in real life. But there's a lot of other drivers who got their names known from GT Sport specifically. And they're trying to make it known now. Who's the overall better driver in all things considered? It probably still, for now, is the real world race car driver. But in the future, if those drivers get a chance, who knows? It could be them. But as of now, there's no one really getting a downright fair chance. And of course, there's the obvious thing too, of the GT Sport penalty system can't be perfect, because there's no downright perfect penalty system, even in real life. But there's basic things that I've sold time and again, and has been sold in many YouTubers' live streams, whether it's just a general entertainment style YouTuber or one of the best, some of which are both. It still has been sold. And at this point, the overall numbers of the game from casual fans to the very best have been lowered. There's less of the best even competing now. You know how I just mentioned entertainment style YouTubers could be some of the best racers? Or there's a certain American who there's a bit of a flaw there for me because he likes a rival to Dodge. It's specifically a classic muscle car rival to Dodge. And y'all may know where I'm going there, but again, I gave props to the team he and another driver started because that's just general good because they seem to take in more of the casual fans as well. So it gives a nice springboard for teaming up and such to give a little bit of life to the game. So that's nice on their individual part. But still, that individual driver doesn't seem to really be racing anymore. And he's actually made one of the FIA events. There's a lot more as well. There's a lot more foreign drivers who just aren't there anymore. Like best of the best in GT5 to 6 era. Apparently he's just busier, but who knows in the grand scheme of things. He actually got a sponsor by Monster Energy. He made the thread on GT Planet saying how he wanted to start the whole sort of GT Academy style thing and actually work to become a Formula race car driver. I assume y'all know who I'm talking about again. Literally, I think fairly well undisputed at one point was probably the best of the best driver. At least in a Gran Turismo seasonal event style like the time trials. Not around anymore either. American driver who I've raced with before, even in a dirty room, back in Gran Turismo 5. Arguably at one point the best American driver. Doesn't race anymore. Again, there's probably more reasons than just GT Sport isn't good that they're not racing, but I have a hunch if GT Sport was better, they'd have more reason to race. And again, some of those drivers do make rare appearances. It's just not on a consistent enough level for it to truly matter in the grand scheme of the FIA events, because those you have to race hour after hour non-stop to even have a chance. Which again goes to the whole thing of somebody, shape or form, the driver should get some sort of monetary reward out of it. Obviously, it can't be like Fortnite where they're battling for like $3 million or something because the game isn't as popular. But a game that's still sold 8 million copies, there should be some sort of monetary win to it. Granted, as far as I know, it's all expenses paid to go to the hotels and stuff, but still, if you don't win, there's no benefit in the future. I've done a video on that as well. So the casual fans are leaving because the penalty system is iffy. The best drivers are leaving because the penalty system is... That just sounds like my usual rant always and forever. But here's the thing that kind of correlates to what I'm saying on screen. It's not completely just background. Remember Gran Turismo 6? How with the penalty system in the time trials, you just barely even nudge a wall and an entire lap doesn't count. Even though it's not at all gaining you speed whatsoever, and ultimately there's no way, shape, and form it could at all help a lap, so therefore there's no logical reason whatsoever it should be invalidated. The reason I never made much of a fuss about it in Gran Turismo 6 is because that was directly related to time trials. That didn't affect the race whatsoever. That wasn't a thing in a race. It only happened in time trials, so it didn't really matter how strict or lenient it was in time trials because you could just restart. Now in GT Sport, it doesn't happen, which overall I prefer. In my opinion, if something like this happens, it utterly just does not help your lap whatsoever. It shouldn't be a penalty, but the thing with GT Sport is this time it wasn't a penalty. Other times that I've sold many a time, and many other people have sold many a time as well, it is a penalty. Gran Turismo 6 was consistently strict in an event where it didn't matter because you could just restart. Gran Turismo Sport is inconsistent. Sometimes it's strict and sometimes it's not, but for all events, not just these time trials, but also in races. This, in my opinion, is what's causing the beginning of the end for GT Sport. It apparently did really good at the beginning, better than most people expected. Apparently it sold 8 million copies. But at this point, it's just so inconsistent, no one really wants to come back. From the best of the best to the casuals. And again, my general rant about the penalty system, yeah, blah blah blah. That's probably more for the best of the best. But here has had an inconsistency affects the more casual players who just don't want to come back. The main lore of sport mode is the online aspect and racing each other. And that's supposedly what's PD coined as the main point of Gran Turismo Sport. As sport in the title. Most casual Gran Turismo fans like Gran Turismo because it's a whole heck of a heap of cars. And a whole heck of a heap of different ways they can race the cars. And what's inconsistent about GT Sport is actually being able to do that. There's the occasional way in which you can sort of kind of race different cars against each other. But it's so inconsistent in ways in which you can do that. Like the BMW i3, which is just a general slow production car. That sounds like an N100 car, right? That's in Group X. A Mazda Miata touring car, like with the whole wing and aero package and such on it. Sounds like a race car, doesn't it? Put it in Group 4 or Group X. No, they put it in N200. The BMW i3 is obviously a production car. The Mazda Miata race car is obviously a race car. Literally has touring car in the name. The penalty system hurts, but just the general overall inconsistencies of the game is what's truly and really killing it. I'm sure PD's getting a lot more money than the general person who doesn't know the information like me can comprehend from the FIA side of things. But overall, I guarantee the bulk of GT Sports money, if the sales actually happened, came from the 8 million copies sold. But a very few people are returning from the game. The 8 million copies sold is nice and such, but what does that hold for the future of Gran Turismo? Does it look better than it did 2 or 3 years ago? Honestly, I don't know. Because remember when GT Sport started, I made the whole, and it got quite popular video of how should we actually go about GT Sport. If it does bad, PD might not have enough money to make a decent game afterwards, but at least maybe then it would give them a motivation to attempt to make a decent game. But then if GT Sport sells well, they're not going to need a reason to make another Gran Turismo number game, and they're just going to continue with the sport games. At this point, we're in the exact middle of that. GT Sport has sold well, but they've also hinted at another number game. And that sounds kind of like a win-win, doesn't it? But then when you consider that apparently PD is still having money problems, the whole reason we don't have Spa right now is because PD doesn't want to pay the money for the licensing. And apparently there's still money problems going on with the FIA stuff because of the video that I just mentioned too about the whole copyright thing. They were able to get their actual person directly related to them, and they have a good relationship, copyright stuff fixed, but they can't get the general other music fixed. Apparently, there's something behind the scenes that we don't really know about. I guarantee PD's still making more money than we ever really care to think from the FIA stuff, because it's obvious they have a deal with Toyota to let them win. But with the FIA stuff coming, I think it's tomorrow is when it starts. Or probably by the time you're watching this video in a few hours, really. Like maybe 16 to 18, something like that, hours, when the video first comes up. That's going to be probably PD's last hurrah for me, really. It's in America. I'll pay attention to it. I know who the drivers are. I'll see how it goes. If it goes wonderfully, if the penalty system works great and the racing as well, then maybe I'll give GT Sport more of a chance. But as of now, I just don't have much motivation to race, and it's obvious overall numbers of people don't either. The final Gran Turismo 6 seasonal event. That, honestly, PD didn't really hype up any. It was just a generic... I think it was like 550 pp at Apricot Hill. It wasn't really anything special. It ended with about 50,000 people in it. And that happened in... Wait for it, folks. 2018. Granted, I think GT6 would still have online. It didn't sell as many copies as GT Sport apparently, but still, that sold that people still played it. PS3 game in 2018, its very last one, had more people than GT Sport, not even 2 years old, still on the same system. And supposedly, GT Sport sold about 20% less. GT Sport sold... GT Sport sold 20% more than GT6. GT6 sold 20% less total. GT6 still had more players at the very end of it, when GT Sport had already been out for almost a year. There's a problem somewhere that the general public doesn't know about, but it's obvious it's there. There's a lot of things in the game itself that are also problems. What's the overall main issue that's killing the most people? It's hard to say, but there's just so many issues with GT4 now. I don't really see it getting much better. Again, if tomorrow and the next day's races go well, maybe that'll be something. But again, those only affect the vast minority of people. Granted, a lot of GT Sport fans who are still right now will watch it. But still, ultimately, the only driver it truly affects even in the future is the winner. The one from the Nations Cup and the 3 from the manufacturer. It helps the others in the present time because they go, and maybe it helps a few YouTubers a bit along the way because they make some videos from it, but still. While there's many esports out there that are benefiting the whole community because they're an esport, if anything, I feel like GT Sport trying to be a hindrance, or trying to be an esport, is a hindrance. And honestly, I feel like PD almost is trying to be a hindrance at this point. Hopefully they're just completely shifting focus to GT7, because I made another video on that. It seems like PD's almost purposely making games when they're dying even worse, just so they shift over to the next game. I don't know if that's 100% sure, but again, I don't know if a lot of this is 100% sure. We don't even know if the 8 million of sales is 100% sure. But what is true is that the overall numbers of GT Sport as of now of current players is lower than the end of GT6. And that ain't good, folks. Am I saying I'm completely done racing in GT Sport? Well, I'm going back to college. Wreckfest game I've been waiting for 6 years is finally coming out on console. And I've already sold that I'm nearly boycotting GT Sport again because the penalty system, while slightly better, is still much worse than it ever should be. If I race, it's going to be a little bit. Where I still have GT Sport videos, probably, again, I may do a YouTuber showcase. I sort of kind of have an idea of the future videos to do. Sort of what kind of was a popular trend and attempt to sort of bring it back in an entertaining way. Not necessarily informative, just more for y'all and do sort of a parody type thing. No, it ain't Dirty Endurance Racing League. It's not that. That's for sure. But it's something that got popular in the mainstream. It kind of died out because something old got popular again. Can y'all figure out what I'm talking about there? If not, that might come. I'll see. Also, the Doug DeMuro Fallout GT Planet videos. That'll happen eventually too. Just that got pushed back. Because I wanted to record stuff that was more in the moment first. Like stuff that was pertinent now. Recorded as soon as possible. Like the GT5 Trackmaker thing. Record that as soon as possible. Because the Doug DeMuro thing is as relevant in 2010 as it will be in 2030, really. Obviously, Doug DeMuro's channel gets more and less popular and all that. At some point it'll reach peak, and then at some point it'll die out, as all channels do. But still, the actual GT Planet thing happened to 2009, so that's going to be the same information no matter when I do it. They're still happening at some point, but for now, GT Sport, I just don't really know, folks. I do know this though, Wreckfest is looking good. It's still looking kind of iffy, but GT Sport was looking good and not all that iffy in the closed beta, and then it's more iffy than I think most people ever could have predicted. So Wreckfest, we know it's going to be iffy. But at least it's something new. GT Sport is trying to be something old. It's trying to be iRacing from 10 years ago, and it's still not doing the best job at that. When before, it was doing its own thing, it was the first of its kind, and doing it well, and then it just quit. It burnt it to the ground. And now I think they're starting to see repercussions of it. 8 million sales may have had some people wear the rose-colored glasses, but as I said in many another video, I'm not going to be wearing the rose-colored glasses. I'm going to attempt to tell the truth the best I can. And the truth is, GT Sport is on the beginning of the end. There's a few chances for it to get better, but they've blown many chances in the past, or have done very little to make it better with many chances in the past. Let's see what happens, folks, but as of now, only wait a little bit for Wreckfest, and maybe not have to wait more than a year or two for GT7. We can only hope. Future, maybe E-Haul, but for GT Sport, there's probably not too many E-Hauls left.